is.
There we go.
Hey everybody, it's Coach Bronson here, and today I've got one of the most awesomest people in the world that I know personally, Nurse Cindy. How you doing today, Nurse Cindy?
I'm doing great, Coach Bronson. Good to see you, and thank you for inviting me.
You bet. And we're going to talk about some keto stuff. We're going to talk about your background, just anything else that kind of pops up as we talk. It's going to be kind of free flowing today. Before we do that, I want to make sure that if you're not subscribed to this channel, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the little bell every time you subscribe. That doesn't make sense. Click on the bell so you're notified every time that I come out with the new video.
Keep subscribing. 5 people that subscribe over and over again, he'll get to 1 million.
Right, let's do that. If you could, yeah, I know there's some people that if you could subscribe multiple times that they would, and I super appreciate all the support. Most importantly, though, remember, take this information, particularly this stuff we're going to talk about with Nurse Cindy today. She's been doing this for a long time, has a lot of knowledge bombs I'm sure she's going to drop on us. It's going to impact you. So if it impacts you, that means someone else can be impacted as well. So please take the information, share it, and let's see how many people we can help improve their quality of life, because that's what this is about. It's not about fat loss. It's not about looking good. All those things happen, but it's about making your life better. And I think Cindy, that's kind of your story, right? Just making your life better.
It's progress over perfection is something that has been sort of one of my sayings. Ever since I learned the power of food, whether to heal or to harm. Food is going to basically do one of 2 things. It's going to help you heal or it's going to harm you. And I'd eaten the harmful stuff for so long, for 59 years, that I consider myself a late bloomer.
So how old were you when you kind of figured out, hey, wait a second, this is what's working and this makes sense?
I was 59. I'd been a
wow.
Currently, I've been a nurse for 44 years. I'm a registered nurse.
Okay.
And even as a nurse and even having a type 1 diabetic daughter, I really didn't understand the power of food, because I had been taught in nursing school and through dietitians and repetition from other people and Woman's World and Red Book and all that a calorie is a calorie is a calorie is a calorie.
Yeah.
And I have no memory, Coach Bronson, none, of ever being normal sized until I was introduced to the power of what you eat. Mike Mutzel from, High Intensity Health, he says, eat like your life depends upon it. And I didn't know that. Even as a nurse for 59 years, I did not really understand the power of what I put in my mouth.
Yeah.
So
I saw something online this morning, and I forget who it was. I meant to screenshot it and save it. And it was a nurse who had written out like 20 different things of all of the things that she had to unlearn from her formal education. And it was, food doesn't make a difference. Don't, your doctor's never wrong. Like all of these things.
Avoid the sun. Salt is bad for you. Right.
Yeah. All these things. And it's just like, man, that's absolutely crazy.
It's crazy stuff. It is crazy stuff. Yeah.
But it's up to, individuals to realize that even our doctors and our nurses and our medical professionals don't have all the answers.
No, and we are flawed individuals, every one of us in the world. And when you are put in that position of a health authority, but what you've been taught from even before you went to medical school or nursing school has been that's a calorie is a calorie, eat less, move more, all that stuff. You tend to adopt it because you're going to school to do more complex things. At least you think you're there to do things that are of higher value or more complex.
Yeah.
And I think if we even just look back, when I was in 1st grade, I was ridiculed because back then I went to I was born in 57. So I started school like in 62, 63. There were maybe you had one chubby kid in a class. And there wasn't a plus size. It was called the Husky size in Sears. And my mom had to make the most of my clothes. So I have zero memory of anything other than being ridiculed and the butt of jokes. And so you have a choice. You retreat or you go forth, and you're that funny person. You're the person that's assertive and funny and makes friends easily and helps others. So to finally discover, and my highest weight was 305 pounds, and I'm only 5'3".
Wow.
So I'm under tall. I am under tall. So all these years, and like I said, my highest weight was 305. I started keto at 240.
Okay.
And when I discovered my sister Debbie, who I lovingly say this is all her fault, she's gone to be with the Lord, but when she was alive, she's the one that got me into keto by sending me a video by Dr. Sarah Hallberg.
Okay.
And as I listened to her talk about on a TED Talk, what if we've been treating type 2 diabetes all wrong?
Yeah.
I literally, because TED Talks are what, 17 or 18 minutes long. They're little nuggets, right? To get you to think. They're not a PhD. They're to get you to think.
Right.
And I sat there like, literally like, I was like,
wait a minute.
Poof. I was like, what?
Yeah. That little key that just kind of dropped into the hole that made everything make sense.
And then I started researching other things, and Dr. Dominic D'Agostino and Steve Finney and the greats like Dr. Westman. And 6 years ago, it wasn't such a crowded space with so many voices and so many different opinions.
Yeah.
Back then, it was pretty simple. Keep your carbs really low.
Mm-hmm.
Eat good, healthy, fatty meat, and things start to happen.
Right.
And here I am, 94 pounds down and maintaining it for a long time now.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Something you just said kind of clicked the thought in my head. Do you ever wish we could go back to the early days where it was simpler and less complicated and we didn't have so much science? Like, I think I feel torn between, there's so many people out there right now that are doctors and scientists, and we've got so much scientific information. I really think in many ways it's good. We need it because we need that evidence. We need people working on that stuff to show the masses and create that credibility and that backing to show that why this stuff works. But I think there's so much of it out there, and there's so much out there socially available and YouTube and Instagram and everything else that people are losing focus of how simple it actually is.
Yeah, you can have paralysis by analysis. You can have so many voices talking to you. Fasting is good. Fasting is bad. Certain carbs are good. Certain carbs are bad. Certain fats are, it can be so, and there are truths. There are common truths,
right.
But the complexity, it makes you wonder. I'm a clinician. I still work full time as a nurse, so nothing I do on social media is monetized. Or my daughters tell me that, Mom, you just do everything wrong. you don't post enough. You don't get affiliate links and all that stuff. But because it changed my life, because it has set me free.
Yeah.
Realizing the power of whole foods and the processing that I do, because I used to eat almost exclusively processed foods, and now I would call them frankenfoods or uber processed foods, hyper palatable foods, food-like substances, where there's this, I used to eat all that. That was practically what I ate. The processing I do now is with a knife. My processing is kitchen, maybe a food maybe a knife or a food processor. But when we go back to the simple, as you said, so I would encourage anyone listening to this that the 3 S's I talk about, rather, there's the 2 P's, progress over perfection.
Yep.
Make the changes you can at the point you're at. Don't expect perfection today, tomorrow, or probably ever. You can have a perfect moment when you eat a great steak. Just continue to learn. And my 3 S's are: keep it simple, keep it satisfying, and make sure it's sustainable. If the first keto cookbook you buy, you have to go out and buy 20 exotic ingredients you've never heard of. To me, that is, not only is it not simple, it might be very satisfying, right?
Yeah.
It might taste delicious. But when I first started, it wasn't going to be sustainable because it wasn't simple enough. So we started with the basics of, as Dr. Ken Berry will say, meat and a green leafy veg, right? And then I heard about fat bombs, and you have to have all this fat. So I went into that I've gone down to so many different rabbit holes, but guess where I'm back to six years later?
Where are you at?
I'm at meat and maybe a leafy green veg,
It all comes back around, right? Once you go through all the different things and you realize, wait, why am I making this so complicated? Just
it's And that it's okay to go through the phases. It's okay
Sure.
to use the fat bombs or the artificial sweeteners, the sugar alcohols preferably, as a methodology to help it be sustainable.
Right.
But I've just found in my own life, and I can't speak for anyone else in my own life, it just is that process of progress over perfection and being okay that it's a learning curve. And so I'll make my husband certain keto treats, and then he'll say, what happened to all that? And I won't have eaten a single one. That's not intentional.
Right.
It's just by the time I eat my steak or I eat my chicken or you know what, the sausage, we have venison sausage that we love. I'm so satisfied. And I like to use the word satiety because it sounds like I know what I'm talking about. But I have such satiety. I'm so satisfied that I'm like, the thought of destroying that wonderful mouthfeel, you know.
Yeah.
But I wasn't that way. I wasn't that way all the time. I used keto treats for quite a while.
Mm-hmm. Did you see what changes did you see when you stopped using them? Like why did you stop using them?
You know, it was such a gradual change of making them for him. I don't know. I think it's just easier for my carbs count. I don't really, you know, I was counting carbs for a while there with Keto Savage because we had in talking to him and discussing my nutrition and my goal to start to build muscle as I age, which I think is a whole area we could talk about if you want. He asked me to keep a food diary. Well, I hadn't done that for over 5 years because I was just sort of in this flow. But much to my surprise, I was only eating because of that satiety. And you just get out of the habit of snacking a lot, which was weird. Trust me, I used to eat every hour, hour and a half pre-keto. I was only eating 12 to 1,300 calories a day.
Yeah.
And if you look at what happens as we age, especially as women with the hormone changes we go through, we lose muscle mass faster than men as they age because based on the time our menopause is, and we don't have all the hormones. So here we're young, we're in puberty, right? We start menstruating and we're crazy because of all the hormones. And then we're crazy, you're premenstrual, and then we're crazy when we get pregnant, and then it's postpartum, and then we go into menopause and we're crazy. And now I'm without much hormones and I'm like crazy. So we have it bad. So I intentionally, he put me on what's called a reverse diet. And for probably about 6 months, I very gradually under his guidance, increased not my carbs. We dropped the carbs to 10 grams total a day, but increased my fat and my protein. To me, what was an alarming increase up to about 2,000 calories a day, where I've been able to stay. I've had to start tracking again, Bronson, because I noticed I wasn't eating again.
Yeah.
And it's weird to think that Cindy has to think to eat
more.
But anyway, so
how much do you eat? What's an average day of food look like for you?
Well, one of the folks I really admire, her approach to women and aging and building muscle is Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, Lyon. I don't eat some of the things that she says you can have, so far as the sweet potatoes and things, because for me, I think that would be a slippery slope. I'm not willing to push that edge. I don't miss them. She says you have to earn your carbs, but she talks a lot about what it takes to stimulate mTOR and to get your protein synthesis, which means, for those of you that are non-clinical, to build new muscle cells, or we don't assimilate or absorb the protein. I'm 64. Or am I 65? I'm 64. No, I'm 65. Yep, I'm 65. I forget. Anyway, at 65, I feel like I'm about 45 and I act like I'm 25, but, or my husband will say 15 sometimes, but our body doesn't absorb the protein we do eat. So we have to eat more than when we were younger to get our bodies to have access to enough building blocks to build muscle. So on a good day, I will eat 5 eggs for breakfast.
Okay.
Fried in butter. Now, I cannot eat 5 eggs scrambled. I don't know why. It fluffs them up. I don't.
So there is something different. So I'm the same way. I definitely know, like, I had for my last meal of the day today, I had 8 eggs. And I know that if I had scrambled them, I would have gotten halfway through and just been like,
it's so much, right?
I think it's a texture.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it goes kind of into that palatability. There's a lot of factors that go into how much we can eat based on the response that our mouth has to it. So that's all.
So, but lately I have fallen off of that, and I realized the other day that I was back to not having breakfast. Well, he had me up to about 120 grams of protein a day.
Yep.
And when I was really paying attention to it, and without that 7 grams of protein per egg, right? 5 is 35. So I can get a good, I'm just not hitting my protein ratio again. So it means that my gains in the gym, or when I work, lift weights, even if I'm sitting with my little weights, I don't know what you guys do, but so this is only 2.5 pounds. And this is, I think, 8 pounds, no, 5. And then I've got a 8 pound, and I'll sit in a meeting, and depending on what I'm doing, and, I'll just do, but all of that aside, because I want to try to add movement activity whenever I can. I don't do it if I'm on a video call, I don't do it. Just in case you're wondering, bro.
What are we going to talk about today?
28, 29. And then Fred Hahn spoke on the cruise about the slow burn. And I really like that concept. So, but anyway, so I have to get back to getting more protein in, because muscle strength will be lost. Your muscle mass, meaning how much muscle your body is carrying, not how much you can carry, but what your body has on its bones, will fade at about, I think it's about 1%. Yeah, don't quote me on this, but at about a 1% per year over the age of 60, if we don't intentionally eat enough protein and do resistance training. So I was resistant to resistant training, and then I found out it's a blast. It is so much fun. It is so much fun. So
Go ahead.
And then I just try to, lunch will often be some sort of leftover from the night before meat that I heat up. I called my husband he's over working on a roof, and I called him and said, I have a confession. I've been a bad girl. He goes, what? I said, that leftover steak, I had it for lunch. And he's, oh, that's fine. I said, okay. It was more of a joke anyway. So, so it just, I try to get that. So I have to get really 335 grams a meal. That's still only getting me to 105. So I really need to bump that back up, simply because I want to be strong. And I'm not talking bodybuilder strong. I want to be strong. I want to be able to lift heavy things, bring in my own groceries. If I fall, I want to be able to get up off the floor. And I think I've mentioned to you, there's 2 things I do every single day. I sit on the floor. And I get up without holding on to something or yanking myself. Now, I had to start using something to get up because I hadn't worked out I didn't even start working out to about a year ago. And I bend and stretch till my hands are flat on the floor every day. And that's so every day, barring some really grievous injury or traumatic event, every day I will be able to do that, because that's some of the most common reasons women and men, as we age, we go into assisted living, is we can't do what's called our activities of daily living, or ADLs. We can't bathe ourselves, toilet ourselves. We can't get dressed. If we fall, we can't get up. We can't get out of a chair safely.
So I think we had talked about, and we won't get too much into it now, but we're going to be at KetoCon this year. And we're going to try to set aside some time. And I think we should do a video series or do some kind of something to kind of go over daily activities that people can do to make sure that they can maintain that independence and stuff like that.
I think that's vital. I think it's a real service because you don't have to have a gym membership. You don't. If you like going to the gym, and there's one close by with the price of gas and all that stuff. But however, we did a short video over in Vegas, you and I, last year, with a towel that you can put behind a door or hook around a doorknob and pull in. And I like those movements again. And let me see, I'll forget a lot of them. There's push pull. There's hinge. I forget.
You're doing one right now, sitting in a chair.
So to the lunge, the stand, the squat,
lunge,
the lunge.
Then carrying, the walking.
Okay. Yep.
Twisting.
And the twisting. which put on some music and I'll twist my way. I love to dance. I just love to dance. And that's part of the activity. Find an enjoyable something.
Yep.
Dance like a crazy person in your house,
Sure.
Go for a walk if you like to be outdoors. If you have a dog, they need exercise too. As you do those things, try to increase your pace. And when Dad lived with us, he's 89. He moved into a senior apartment and is loving life. I say it's like a geriatric frat club. He is
I've heard
hilarious.
that. Yeah.
He is hilarious. He's having so much fun. But when he first moved in with us at 88, walking to the end of the driveway, and we don't have a long driveway, but it is just a small slope. It was hard for him to get back up. So what we did was, with his walker for stability,
Mhm.
walk to the end of the driveway and then turn around, come back up. And
Okay.
then it was walk to the end of the driveway the next day, go out and walk just a few feet and come back up. And he just texted me the other day, he's up to doing about 1.5 miles right
Wow.
now.
Okay.
So and we would do the Map My Walk on his Apple Watch.
Yeah.
And when we would celebrate 1/10 of a mile, we would celebrate when he got, and if he needed to sit down and rest for a minute because the walker had a seat, he would do that. So I highly encourage anyone listening to this, begin where you're at. And if you can't even get out of the chair right now, work on your upper arms, work on just being able to push yourself up. And I'd love to do that with you, Bronson.
There's a
Carve out
lot of people that feel like they're so far gone that they just don't have any options. And
It's never too late.
I,
Yeah.
I like to say, look, if there's anything that you can do that's difficult, do it until it's not difficult. If you're at a point where
Yes.
just getting out of the chair is a pain in the butt and you're like, man, I want to get up and go do this. It's just so hard to get out of the chair. Then that's what you should be doing for your.
That's exactly right, because that is quality of life. And you said something about, what was it you say about, I love this thing and I totally have blanked on it, that exercise, fitness is freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Fitness is freedom.
It is.
Yeah.
I don't want to be barring, if it's up to me, I want to be able to be mobile, agile, sassy, and be that little lady out on the dance floor that everybody likes.
There you go. There you go. So you said you're 5'9"?
5'3".
5'3"?
I wish I was. I should be.
5'3". Okay, 5'3". That's right.
I should be.
And okay, so you're 5'3", you're 65, and you eat 120, and you're trying to get to 120 grams of protein. But you've done that in the past.
I did that just 3 or 4 months ago. Yeah.
Okay. No, that's good. I just want people to understand, because there's a lot of women that fit your build and your size and everything who are like, I can't eat more than 100 grams, and like, you absolutely can.
Yeah, it has to be intentional, and you have to find things that you can eat that much of, and
it takes time. It's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah,
Don't go from eating 60 calories today to try to do 120 tomorrow.
No, he really, it was over a 6-week, probably an 8-week process where we just added certain amount of grams of protein and fat, and then we just dropped like 1 gram a time at the 20, from the 20 down to 10.
Yeah.
Because they don't serve me. The carbs don't really serve me like the protein does.
Yeah, they don't really serve it. I think for carbs don't really serve anybody other than adding a level of enjoyment to the food that makes it easier to maintain something. So for the most part, I don't necessarily recommend carbs to people, but I don't say don't eat them either. Like,
right, because then it's not sustainable for where they're at. Right. I used to, when I first started, I would have a big salad, not just a couple of handfuls, but I would have, because it was sustainable for me to have that volume of food with a lot of cheese and a lot of meat on it. And then it's just so funny when I look back and I sort of do a little mental, how Facebook will show you your
memories. Yeah.
Yeah. And I look back and I think, wow, I just don't do that anymore. But when I do eat, oh my gosh, it's just, we actually made Brussels sprouts with bacon grease the other night, and it was delicious. I had like 5, and you're like, why only 5? Because I had this steak that was calling my name.
Right. When you focus on the, I did an interview with Lily Kane recently. I don't know if you know who she is. She's a big, newer in the carnivore space, blowing it up right now. And she was saying, it's funny how everyone's like, I just can't eat meat all the time. I get bored. But at the same time, even under a standard American diet, when you go out to dinner, the meat is the most expensive. That's what they call the main course.
Yes.
That's the
Yes.
focus of the meal. So
Yeah.
why are we now saying that that's not something that we can like sustain us? It's just kind of a weird.
That's a really good thing. And the amino acids, there's all these essential amino acids in it that we have to sustain life.
Yeah.
And when we don't, the body will oftentimes pull those stored essential amino acids from parts of our body that we really need.
Yep.
And we start to lose muscular tissue just to
And
keep
bone
us, the daily fuel allotment going. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Something you talked about earlier, you were talking about food is either good or bad. Then we were also talking about, it's as we get older, growing muscle is harder. It's more of a, we got to be more deliberate about what we're doing. I think that rolls, both of those concepts kind of roll into the idea of there is no such thing as a net zero. Either we're a net plus or something, either we're eating or doing something that's a net plus, or we're eating or doing something that's a net zero. And not doing something is always a net negative. Sorry, not net zero, net negative.
Well, I love that.
The middle, right? It's either helping or hurting, no matter. That's even not doing something. Just because you're not working out, because you're maintaining. There's really no such thing as maintaining. Essentially, is that something that you found?
No, I have thought about that a lot, because when I like to try to use analogies. So if we have I don't care if it's a lawnmower or a truck or something that we leave out in the weather and we don't start it for a long period of time, just the oxidation or the exposure to the elements will cause that thing to deteriorate. And it's the same thing with my body at rest. If I'm not working to minimally maintain my joint movement and flexibility, because when I move a joint, I'm literally asking that synovial fluid that bathes my joint, which is the lubricant inside my joint, to move around and to sort of help flush out little particles of things. But if you've ever sat for a period of time, and even for me, I'll get up after this interview and I'll feel that, because I am 65. We've remembered that I'm 65 and not 64. Isn't that funny? And I'll stand up and I'll feel a little stiff.
Right.
So you're exactly right. There is really not a net zero. There's movement forward or movement backwards. And not only Newton's law of physics, a body at rest tends to stay at rest. That body is going to start to, that whole couch potato thing. It's not that we just don't call people couch steaks. We call them a couch potato, right? You're not a couch shrimp. You're a couch.
See, I had another note, but I don't know. We've talked about so many things already that I've got notes and I forgot which one I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I do that to people. I sort of go off. Do you remember that animated movie where the dog is like paying attention, all of a sudden he goes squirrel and he totally loses? That's me. I do that to people. Squirrel.
Talk to us a little bit. So I've seen you recently at 2 different conferences, and in both you talked about the same thing. You talked about poop.
Yep.
So what can you give us a quick insight into, without getting into all, because you went into deep and
great detail.
Let's just talk about how important is our poop, and being able to look at that and kind of say, hey, this is what's going on.
Yeah, so I would encourage anyone to Google the Bristol stool, STOOL chart, not like a chair stool, but stool is the medical term for poop. And when we consume any food, what we're going to do is, if you've ever heard of a manufacturing line where they take raw materials and they create something, we're going to take something that's been made, whether by nature or by big food, and I want you to think of your intestinal tract as a deconstruction. We're going to deconstruct it. And the body is intrinsically so intelligent that it's going to say, oh, look, I have these nuggets of protein and fat. And oh no, there comes all that junk. Okay, well, but I like this protein and I like this fat. And what it's going to do is it's going to take what it needs and or what's available and it's going to be taken up into the bloodstream and one way or another and deposited to the cells, stored as fat if we have too much, helps build muscle if we have enough protein, et cetera, all those things. When the process is over of the usable stuff, the body looks at the garbage that's left behind, and that is our feces or our stool. And we will engage in what's called defecation, or, have a BM, have a bowel movement. The medical term is defecation. And that is the waste products. That's like taking out your recycling, right? You just, whatever is left behind that the body can't use. So if we don't drink enough or move enough, that stuff moves through so slowly that what would be a soft amount of feces or stool gets more and more dehydrated inside of us. And then we look up the Bristol stool chart, and you're going to have these little rabbit pellet type of thing, or it'll get, if you don't pay attention to the urge, we have about 6 in a 24-hour period of time, 6 what they call colonic stimulant or movements, where this peristalsis through our colons, and you'll feel a little bit of pressure down in your rectum. And if you pay attention and you go to the bathroom right then, when you feel that sort of urge, you'll have you'll get rid of the junk out of your trunks that you don't need. But if we ignore it, right, the urge passes, but it's like a traffic jam, stuff keeps coming down. So we want to have regular bowel movements in the sense that they're not painful. They're not difficult. It's not difficult to have a bowel movement. You're not having to do excessive straining. And there's ways you can address that by movement, by adequate hydration, enough salt and magnesium, especially. But we also don't want the far end of the spectrum, which is diarrhea. And that's where it moves through too fast, and we don't get to absorb the nutrients. So
how often should you poop a day?
That's a good question. That will vary. It will vary by how much you eat, when you eat, if you're hydrated, if you pay attention to that signal, if you can get to the bathroom when you have that signal. The actual medical definition of constipation is if you have less than 3 bowel movements a week. So less than 3 is 2. But they're looking at an average over a week.
So if someone goes a 24-hour period and they don't poop, they don't need to freak out right away.
No, we tend to, and the older we get, the more we tend to freak out. It's a big joke is that, what do you guys talk about? Poop. We talked about constipation. So what we want to do though is we want to supplement enough electrolytes. We want to hydrate with good water. We want to be sure that if we're out in the heat, that we really, really pay attention to the loss of those minerals and water through sweat or evaporative loss.
Can you go over that real quick? Like, why is electrolytes important? Because I one of the things that really frustrates me, and I don't know if I should get frustrated or not, is when I see in these groups, people are asking, they're like, hey, I started doing keto, I started doing carnivore, I haven't pooped in a couple of days, I feel like might be constipated, or the opposite, I've got diarrhea, I've been running to the bathroom all day long. And the answer that they always get is, well, if you just eat more fat. And I just want to be like, oh, it's like, come on, guys, that is not the answer to everything.
Right. Now, if you don't have a gallbladder, and gallbladder is just a reservoir, think of it as a gas tank that holds bile, and the gallbladder functions to squirt bile into your small intestine when you do eat fatty food. Without that, or if you have a problem with enough bile, you might get diarrhea from a lot of fat because it's not digested and it just slides right on out the chute. But the importance of water and electrolytes, if I just drink water, and I don't add some salt or magnesium or potassium to that, the water is going to just go more quickly to the bladder and be excreted versus letting it be absorbed into the cells to keep them nice and plump. And it won't stay in my colon long enough to help my feces, my poop, stay soft enough that it's easy to excrete.
Right.
And that's when I start to get, because the longer that poop stays in your colon, typically the more dehydrated it's going to be. So it goes from like a sausage to something that's sort of little chunks, to goes to the rabbit pellets, or it gets impacted and it's hard. But I think, okay, here's an example, real life example. We are very good with what we eat at not having a lot of packaging left over. We don't have pizza boxes. We don't have cereal boxes. So, and we're very good at recycling. So when we do have plastics or glass or things, it goes in our recycling bin. And literally we take out this little tiny bag of garbage. And instead of hauling our big black garbage can down to the street, we'll go bless a neighbor. And we'll say, there's our
There's our
blessing.
little trash for the week. Yeah.
They think we're hilarious, but I want you to think of that as someone that used to eat a lot of junk food, and especially if you eat a lot of fiber, you're going to have a lot more trash to evacuate out of your body versus the, like the trash we used to take out of the house. And so when you eat, if you're eating a more protein heavy carnivore-ish, inadvertently carnivore, ketovore.
Oh, I like that. Inadvertently carnivore. That's
I literally became inadvertently a carnivore most days. I didn't mean to. It wasn't a plan. I just love my meat, and that was a gradual process. In my
experience, most people end up going that way. It's just so much easier, and it's the basics. But
it's easy to shop too. But anyway, so I poop less now than less in volume, less in frequency, but not constipated. Then unless I've been outside working a lot in the yard, or I love to be out in the yard. I love to mow and trim, and I can get dehydrated, and then I pay the price. But I think we to think we all have to poop 2 to 3 times a day. You might.
Yeah.
You might.
Yeah. But if you don't, it's probably not, all right. 3 times a week. That's good to know.
Less than 3 times a week is constipated medically.
Yeah. I like to tell people too, whenever I work with people, and just my general recommendation when it comes to hydration is don't drink anything if it doesn't have something in it. Like, don't drink any water. I personally recommend that if you're drinking water, it should have some kind of electrolyte in it. There should never
a little bit of Redmond salt, if nothing else, right? Just drop some in the bottle. I don't really like salty water to drink, so there's numerous different types of. I like the Relight. I like the there's the electrolyte drops that Keto Chow has. Myoscience just came out with some, and then there's the ones by lots of different people. But a lot of times, if I just want to, if I'm on the run, I keep one of those little Redmond salt things in my, I might even have one over here. Yep.
Sure,
I keep it right here at my desk, where I work. And you can see it's almost empty. It's time to refill it. And I many times I'll do like a little
shot. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'll do a little shot, and then I can enjoy my icy cold water. I like to keep it really, really cold. I just love that, especially in the summer. But I agree, because we want and the reason we want to make sure we have enough electrolytes, the other reason is that it will literally help keep the moisture in your colon long enough to help hydrate your poop. And it will also be in there long enough that the capillaries that are right there at our blood, our intestinal tract's very perfused with a lot of hundreds and thousands of capillaries. The water is going to not go so quickly once it gets into the bloodstream, right to the kidneys, and us pee a lot.
So that brings up an interesting topic. I've been seeing a lot of this recently with people. It's funny how things come in phases, right? It was all about fat before. Now people are I think the last year and a half, it's really been, people are starting to realize the importance of protein and muscle and the importance of electrolytes. And I think those two are the current kind of things that people are ramping up on an awareness. As that happens, I see a lot of discussions about people who are increasing their electrolytes and saying that they're getting edema.
Saying that they're getting edema.
They're saying, I started having more salt. Now I'm swelling. What's wrong? I thought this was supposed to help. When I go off of carbs, my swelling is supposed to go down, but I feel like because I'm eating more salt, now it's going up. Like, what's the process, and what should people be looking for if they're cutting carbs, they haven't been getting enough electrolytes, and now they're switching it all up, and they feel like their body's kind of doing all the opposite of what?
Yeah. Well, that is such a great question, and one that we could have probably a doctoral dissertation on, because the young, healthy person might feel that edema, who's pretty lean, might feel that edema because they're so lean, they're not used to swelling. The swelling for someone my age or older who might have a little bit of cardiac output difficulties, might not be used to a lot of physical activity, especially in the legs. Fluid will always roll downhill, whether that's in my body or down a hill or a waterfall. I've
Right.
never seen a water up, right? So I have to be careful and wear compression hose because of the many decades that I was very heavy. I had a lot of varicosities, a lot of varicose veins, because fluid in the leg only moves back uphill if I'm walking and using my calf muscle pump to milk that fluid, the venous fluid out. So you can retain some with, especially if it's a rapid increase and a lot of salt increase, depending on your background and if you're taking any medications. So I would encourage them to think through, am I overdoing it for my medical condition? And if my, like for me, my wedding ring in the morning is always tight. One of the reasons it's always tight is I'm laying it like, I sleep like an angel, but I'm not doing typing. I'm not, washing dishes. I'm not moving around. And so fluid responds to movement, and it's going to help it get back into the circulatory system. So there could be some truth based on that. And I would just, the only person who's going to figure out the right level of salt and magnesium and sodium intake is you. I meant to say potassium, and you'll have to do little series of experiments. And I would just encourage you, if you're very sedentary and you're feeling that edema, much of that can be removed with walking around, with increasing your activity, with just doing ankle rolls where you take your ankle and you move it around. And the other night I was sitting on the couch next to Clarence, and I like to elevate my legs when I can, because I do have this history of venous congestion in my legs. And so I'm laying there and I just stick my legs, I lay down, put my head on his lap and stick my legs up. And Clarence, you've met him, he's a hoot. And he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm just draining my legs. I'm just myself in the fluid.
I can totally see the look on his face right now too.
At least I'm not doing it in a restaurant, right? At least I have some boundaries.
That's hilarious. That's great. I like the always going back to, if something's not happening the way you expected, experiment on yourself, figure out what's going on. If you need a little bit less, if maybe you went from not getting any to 5 grams a day, maybe you need to start at 1 gram a day and kind of see how that works. And moving around always helps, and just play around with it. I think,
and a lot of times if you do increase your water intake, if you find swelling, it'll we have this sort of if you think of a teeter-totter, right? And so wherever it's an osmotic pull, meaning osmosis, is where I have a high concentration of one, the other is going to try to get it to balance. It doesn't want it too high or too low. So it sounds weird, but if you have some swelling and you drink more water, it's going to help the kidneys flush it out. Then it'll pull it out of those cells to restore it back into the bloodstream.
Okay.
So that's a thought.
So you just might have too much of a concentration, right? So dilute it a little bit.
Yeah.
Which is the same reason why I don't recommend drinking water usually by itself, because you're diluting it the other way. It's over diluting, and then you don't have enough. So it's that balance.
Yeah. You'll urinate out a lot of sodium and a lot of potassium. Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk. You mentioned something too earlier about the liver. I think you said something about the liver. Something in my head clicked liver, and I've got liver is not a filter. Can we talk about that a little bit? Because I mean, I know everybody thinks about the liver as a filter, and my limited understanding is that I think it was Chris Masterjohn who I saw a post a couple of years ago, and he had the Bart Simpson with the blackboard which says whatever, and he had replaced the words with "the liver is not a filter," and he was talking about how it's a converter. It's not the same thing. Like, we don't need to detox our liver, because it's not like it's holding on to a bunch of gunk that's been filtered out.
It's not like your air conditioning or your fish tank filter. It is responsible for detoxification in and of itself. And what'll happen is when we eat, remember, food either hurts us or it heals us. And when we eat a lot of carbohydrates, especially things that have high fructose corn syrup in it, or a lot of things that have table sugar, which is half sucrose and half fructose. Fructose does not get metabolized anywhere but the liver.
Yep.
Glucose is dealt with by insulin and all that. The liver has to process fructose. So all this thing about people have fatty liver, and then people want to sell you their detox magic powders. Really, the best way to detox your liver, which to me means let's let it optimize its ability to take care of all the crap that it has to have, and deal with, is to reduce the fat content of our liver. How do we do that? Well, we don't get liposuction to our liver. That's not something you'll ever see anyone offer, because it's these little blobs all within it, and it becomes very heavy, right? And it is sluggish now.
Yep.
And so the best way you manage that is decrease your fructose intake. High fructose corn syrup, fruit juices are horrible for us. That's one of the best things my daughters ever did, is their children rarely ever get fruit juice. They drink water. They love water.
100%.
And a lot of our childhood obesity is due to that. And so many kids have a fatty liver. So we don't need to liver detox. We need to allow our liver to detoxify itself by reducing our fructose, especially the high fructose corn syrup.
We need a lifestyle detox to let our liver do what it's meant to do.
And you know what's amazing is that when people go in for bariatric surgery or any surgery in the abdomen, and they do, a pre-op, some sort of scan of the abdomen, and they see they have a fatty liver, they ask them to fast for 48 hours before the surgery, or a series of short fasts. And the liver size will reduce. So you can ask Dr. Rob Sivas, he's a bariatric surgeon, about this. The liver size, just by those couple of days, by cutting out your sugars, especially your fructoses, just releases that fat so dramatically.
That's crazy.
That they can go in with their instrumentation and they can get to where they need to get to. So the liver is so amazing about regenerative healing.
Yeah.
If we don't keep insulting it and assaulting it, with
stop insulting your liver.
Yeah, I'm insulted and you're assaulting me. Yeah. So but it will in many instances, unless you've actually gotten to this alcoholic fatty steatosis, it's one step away from cirrhosis.
Right.
The liver will do amazing things to heal itself, but you got to stop the fructose.
That's amazing. Okay.
Yeah.
Man, I feel like there's so many things we could talk about.
I'm
going to ask you one more question.
Okay.
You've been doing this for 6 years, you said.
Yes, and I've learned that I have to take off the cap to drink.
Hey, that's okay. The last couple of weeks I've been having these, like, I guess I've got so much on my mind, I'm doing random things and just all wrong. The other day I tried to put the cover of my water bottle onto an electrolyte container instead of the other way around. I put my food scale in the fridge, and I put my meat in the drawer. Right. I was like, wait, this is backwards.
How long did you find that out?
It was like right when I did it. I was like, wait a second, what did I just do that for? Yeah.
My God.
It's been interesting the last couple of weeks.
So this is why we bond, because
we're so you've been doing this for 6 years. We're gonna say, if you can pick one thing that's been your biggest challenge over the last 6 years in making this change and sustaining it, what do you think it is?
That I made the decision one time, it's a single decision, that I will never eat processed carbs again.
Mm-hmm.
I made that decision at my first keto conference when I heard the scientists and the Dr. Westmans and the Dr. David Diamond and Steve Finney and all of the Jeff Volek talk about the science and the power of letting our body make energy from my stored fat and how it helps heal all these various problems.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked down, it was my sister and my daughter Rachel and her husband Justin and my friend Jana. And I looked down at them next speaker was coming up, and I said, I can never eat carbs again. So people say, Cindy, do you have a cheat day? Cindy, what do you do about Christmas? What do you do about, I might make a keto treat, but the power of a single decision that I will never eat processed carbs again is my biggest and best thing. And there's food addiction specialists that talk about that, because part of any addiction recovery is that you have to know that you can't no one says to somebody that drinks 3 6-packs a day of beer, well, let's get you down to 2, let's get you down to 1.
Right.
And after you've been sober for 6 months, we'll go out and because it'll be Christmas and we're just, So for me, my biggest decision was to never eat processed carbs again. And then the second biggest thing probably, and this is an ongoing process, is practice patience and allow myself to progress over perfection.
Yeah.
And those 3 things, along with simple, satisfying, and sustainable. And the simple, satisfying, and simple has always been simple. I'm pretty simple. I'm not good at big. I'll never have a cooking channel. But the satisfying and the sustainable have morphed some as I've learned and leaned into and grown in understanding how my body responds to certain foods. That was, but the one single decision to never ever. So people say, do you have a cheat day? Maybe I'll have some strawberries.
Right. Yeah. No, I 100%. I've talked about if you make the decision once, then everything else from that point is just a planning.
Well,
just
I don't want to say it's easy, but that decision allows you to not have to, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And Aunt Susie might be upset. And
Yep. There's 2 things I compare it to, and I've had conversations with clients, and I try to bring it into a picture that people can comprehend. It's your marriage and it's your religion, right? When you decide that you're going to marry someone, you don't do that until the weekend, and then you go out and party. Like I'm married. This is how I'm living my life.
You can, but the marriage won't survive.
Yeah, right. Right. That's not how this works.
Right.
And it's the same with your religion. If you've decided that this is my faith, this is my belief system, this is how I'm going to live my life, it's not like you do that and then you go, okay, but on Monday I'm done. I'm going to go back to doing things like there is no God and I don't believe in anything. Like it just doesn't work.
And some people try that, or they might fall into that, and then what? They're filled with guilt. They're filled with remorse. They're filled with and I've really stopped paying attention to the scales and pay a lot more attention to how I feel, what's my energy level, and how do my clothes fit.
Yeah. And how much can you deadlift?
I love lifting heavy things. On it, right? Yeah. So when I carry in grocery bags, I don't carry them in sort of like this. I lift them depending on how heavy they are, and I'm walking up the driveway doing like.
Nice, I love it. Did you ever go to that gym and start working out at the gym?
Which one? I go to
Gold. You found the powerlifting gym.
Oh no, I haven't. I boogered up I was doing the stairs on the cruise, and it was like I was doing like, I don't know, 70 or 80 flights a day.
So many levels in that.
Yeah, I gave myself a bad bursitis in my. Remember, I'm 65. So I'm hobbling, but I'm gonna get back into it. Yeah. So right now I'm just doing resistance training at home and going to gym and doing and it's been interesting what I learned from Fred about the slow burn is it for me, because I'm not trying to right now. I don't want to hurt myself, and I'm having to really be careful with squats. But what you can do with a very slow, eccentric and constant, whatever those 2 terms are that I never get right. With that, and to not let it go down fast, but to really control that through the full range of motion. Wow.
Yeah. It's a great way to get the muscle.
You see guys in there doing this and they're pumping, on the shoulder machine and all that. And I'm like, and it's going clang, clang, clang. And I'm like, yeah, but it's fun. It's awesome. Fun to watch some of the guys. They go up and they sort of look at how much weight I was doing as I walk away. It's pretty funny.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Nurse Cindy, for being on. I appreciate it. I'll get this out to you as soon as it's public.
Oh, that's so kind. I'll post it on mine, and you guys can find me on Ask Nurse Cindy. And especially if you have a mom or grandma who has always struggled with their weight, I just share my journey. I don't post very often these days because of work being pretty crazy, but because Bronson, I love you. I just adore you. Give hugs to Natalie, and
will do.
I will see you in just a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I know, right? KetoCon just a few weeks away. Now, real quick, you said it's Ask Nurse Cindy.
Yep.
Is that the same everywhere, all together, no space?
Yeah, because I'm so creative. So creative. So Ask Nurse Cindy is me on YouTube and on Facebook and Instagram. I don't really do much tweeting or gramming.
Okay. You're not on the gram.
I'm not on the gram.
Definitely not on the TikTok. Right?
I'm there. Oh Lord, I don't even get that. So
Awesome. Thank you very much, Cindy. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.